Well guys, the trades just keep on coming. Many thought the Jimmy Butler trade would be next, but now we got De'Aaron Fox becoming a San Antonio Spur. And according to Shams Charania, Sacramento has finalized a trade to send De'Aaron Fox to San Antonio in return for Zach LaVine going to Sacramento, along with Zach Collins, Trey Jones, Kevin Huerter, and their own 2025 pick via San Antonio going to Chicago. With the full trade including San Antonio getting De'Aaron Fox and Jordan McLaughlin for salary filler, Sacramento getting Zach LaVine, Sidy Cissoko, 3 first-round draft picks, aka the 2025 Charlotte first-round draft pick, the 2027 San Antonio first-round draft pick, and the 2031 Timberwolves first-round draft pick. And then along with that, 3 second-round draft picks, the 2025 Chicago, 2028 Denver, and their own 2028 draft pick, and that's a pretty damn good return package for De'Aaron Fox. I mean, with Luka Doncic only fetching 1 first-round draft pick, albeit with Anthony Davis with him, and that's obviously a pretty good return too, that's a pretty damn fair return package for De'Aaron Fox. I mean, he's not anywhere close to Luka Doncic, a 2-time All-Star, hasn't really gone far in the playoffs up until this point, and although is fairly young yet, not as young as Luka Doncic, being 27 compared to being 25, and overall that's a great return package for him. The first round draft picks, the second round draft picks, and then Zach LaVine on top of it, who despite having a not so great contract, getting an all-star for an all-star in return, and plenty of draft picks with him. And even with the not so great contract with Zach LaVine, he's actually playing up to that contract this season and is actually looking like he might be worth it too. So from that standpoint, great return package for Sacramento, and if they were going to trade De'Aaron Fox, which they obviously did here, this is the kind of return package they needed to get from him. But with that being said, would this be more of a Laker channel? Were they affected by the trade? Or can they benefit from this trade? I think they might be able to, and we'll talk about why and break that all down. But before we get too far into it, let's go over our game day picks with Underdog Fantasy, the best way to get in on the NBA action this season. And if you're a new sign up, you can pick Travis Kelce to have higher than 0.5 yards during the Super Bowl, all the way up until February 9th too. So yeah, take advantage of that free pick. But then for my picks later tonight, for pick number 1, I got DeAndre Ayton having higher than 16.5 points. He's now had that in 3 straight games, and coming off a 24-point game against Phoenix, his matchup again tonight, so I think he can get more than that amount. Then for pick number 2, I got Toumani Camara having higher than 8.5 rebounds and assists. Pretty much gets that every game, and I take that pick pretty often. Then for pick number 3, I got Quinton Post having higher than 5.5 rebounds and assists. Quinton Post's been getting a bunch more playing time lately, and apart from that Laker game where he got hurt, he's hit that amount or higher in 4 of their past 5 games. But then for my 4th and final pick, I got Kevin Durant having lower than 2.5 blocks and steals. And the good thing about this play, you only have to get 3 out of the 4 right, and you can still win money for that too. So if you want to follow along with me, or make your own picks, then be sure to check out Underdog Fantasy, and don't forget to use code JSM to get your free pick, plus up to $1,000 in bonus cash when you make a deposit. But now getting back to our topic, and again, with the De'Aaron Fox trade, there's definitely a lot of impact from this trade, not only on the San Antonio Spurs, Sacramento Kings, or Chicago Bulls, but really the entire NBA landscape, and anytime a big trade like this happens, there will be a larger impact in the trade alone. Now a couple of weeks ago I talked about how it might benefit the Lakers. I thought maybe Chris Paul would be involved in the trade and maybe get sent to a rebuilding team where he would then get bought out and or waived by that team, and that might be an opportunity for Lakers to sign a point guard, but now with them trading for Luka Doncic, aka another point guard, point forward if you will, another ball handler for their team, they don't really need that as much. Now they need more of a center, maybe another 3&D wing, and that's probably what they should look to target, and this trade actually might help them out in getting one. No, not directly from the trade, they obviously weren't involved in the trade, and not really anyone that was involved in the trade either. Nobody got really sent to a rebuilding team that will probably get bought out. The only one that might would be Kevin Huerter, and that's not very likely. And even if he would, the Lakers couldn't sign him due to being a first apron team. But it's more about the teams that weren't involved in the trade. A team like the Charlotte Hornets, for example, they were rumored to be involved in this trade, likely want to be involved in this trade, to get back draft assets in return for players that they really don't want in their team, and guys that are probably helping them win too many games, as they're definitely trying to tank. Especially after Brandon Miller being ruled out for the season, LaMelo Ball getting hurt, they're in a prime position to tank and likely do want to lose games rather than win them. And with that being said, they would be very open to making a trade, whether it's being involved as a 3rd or 14 minute trade, or directly trading with the team for a 1-for-1 trade, they'd be very open to it. And again, for a team like the Lakers who could use more 3&D wing depth, they have a few guys that might be worth taking a look into. One of which being a guy like Josh Green, for example, a former teammate of Luka Doncic, a guy that's shooting about 42% from 3 this season, a pretty good wing defender, good point of attack defender on top of that, a defensive playmaker, averaging 1.1 steals per game in only about 28 minutes per game, aka about 1.5 of them per 36 minutes, and a guy that might be a good fit for their team and an upgrade over Gabe Vincent. Now, I for one have actually been a fan of Gabe Vincent, or at least during the past couple of months now, with him shooting about 38% from 3 in the past 2 months, with good point of attack defense, some ball handling ability off the bench, and often being a member of their fourth quarter lineups. I don't think he's simply a wasted space in their team, even though some people tend to claim that from the early season narratives about him and him being hurt last season, but that's simply not the truth. However, I think they could benefit to upgrade from him, and a guy like Josh Green might be a way to do it. Whether we're talking about 3-point shooting, he would be an upgrade here for them. Again, shooting about 42% from 3 this season, about 38.5% last season, and 40.2% the one before that one. So definitely a 3-point shooting upgrade, whether we're talking about reliability or simply the ability to make them. Then for defense, I think they're pretty similar. Good point of attack defenders, but then with Josh Green, he gives you more versatility on defense, being a bit bigger, a bit longer, and a bit more versatile on defense too. So in that regard, might be a good trade target and might be an upgrade worth trading Gabe Vincent for. And that would be my primary trade target on the Hornets, but you also could make an argument for a guy like Josh Okogie, another 3&D-ish wing kind of for their team, more of the defensive, not really the 3-point shooting. Despite shooting 38.5% from 3 this season, only is a 30% career 3-point shooter. Would be an okay option, definitely defensively, but I think I would prefer Josh Green. And then regard to Cody Martin, another option for their team here as well, but again, not a very reliable 3-point shooter despite being a good wing defender. That's only for the Charlotte Hornets though, but they're definitely not the only team they can make a trade with, and probably not the only rebuilding team that might feel pressure to make a trade from this De'Aaron Fox trade. Another team could be a team like the Brooklyn Nets. They're trying to get worse as well, and they currently have too many good veterans on their team to be able to get a top 5 draft pick. And well, whether it be a guy like Cam Johnson, who I'd love to have but probably not very likely, or a guy like Nick Claxton or Day'Ron Sharpe, both of which are centers, I think they would be on the open market and would be willing to trade them too. Now the smaller trade target here would be Day'Ron Sharpe, at least by payroll and salary, but definitely not in regard to overall size and impact. The guy's a pretty good backup center, a great rebounder. I've often referred to him as kind of a mini poor man's Andre Drummond. He's really that good of a rebounder, averaging about 15 per 36 minutes on his career, so that could be a pretty good option for them. Maybe not the best overall rim protector, definitely not the most talented offensive player in the world, but I think he'd be an upgrade for their team, especially with their current center rotation looking like Jackson Hayes, a hurt Christian Wood, and then two-way contracts being Trey Jemison and Christian Koloko. They could make a trade for him with the currently injured Christian Wood, along with a minimum contract like Cam Reddish or a different guy with him, and they could pull that trade off for him. And then for Nick Claxton, I talked about him yesterday. Whether it be a guy like him, or Miles Turner, or Walker Kessler, that would be the home run kind of trade target for their team in regard to upgrading their front court. And I definitely would make a call for him. Nick Claxton's a very good defensive center, the kind of guy they need behind LeBron James, Luka Doncic, and then the lob threat too. I think we often forget with Luka Doncic, the guy throws a ton of alley-oops, and he really does need that lob threat on the court with him. It can't be a non-vertical threat on the court with him. That would be taking away from what he does offensively and really taking a valuable option away from their offense. So I think they would benefit greatly from a guy like Nick Claxton. The 3-point shooting might be at a loss here, but the really valuable thing does happen to be the defense with the lob threat ability, both which he would give them in bunches. A great vertical leaper, a great rim protector, a very switchable defensive big, truly can switch 1 through 5 on the court, and that would be what they need right now. So if they could pull that kind of trade off, which would include a guy like Rui Hachimura with Gabe Vincent and a minimum contract with them and likely an unprotected first round draft pick, or maybe a lightly protected one, maybe being top 3 or top 5 protected, I would definitely look into making that trade. But then I think the final team that will feel a bit pressured to get worse after this trade does happen to be the Chicago Bulls. After cutting bait with Zach LaVine, they still have guys like Nikola Vucevic, Lonzo Ball, Kobe White, Josh Giddey, Ayo Dosunmu, Javon Carter, and a few more vets in their team that are currently making them better than they probably want to be. Right now, they're at about that top 10 draft pick, but they'd much prefer to be at a top 5 draft pick. I mean, if they can get a chance at Cooper Flag, I think any team would want that, and they probably are thinking that at this point too. So in regard to tradability, they're a very tradable team at this point. They're about 11 million below the first apron, so they can take back more money in return if they want to. Obviously want more draft picks, have tons of veterans available, but the only problem is that I'm not that interested in them. I wouldn't really make a trade for Lonzo Ball. They don't have a need for a point guard at this point, not really anyways. And while I would like his defense, the injury risk with him and having to trade Rui Hachimura for him would simply be too much for me. Same thing with Nikola Vucevic, probably not wanting to trade Hachimura for him. Yes, they obviously need a center, but ideally more of a defensive-minded center, and that's the opposite of Nikola Vucevic. I think more about guys like if Jalen Smith would be available, might not be the ideal center or the apple of your eye kind of center that you want, but is a pretty good rim protector and can space the floor, so I definitely ask about him. Then for a guy like Ayo Dosunmu, more scoring punch off their bench, more defensive versatility off their bench, I'd contact them about him. And then maybe Javon Carter too. Not very straight up trade, but more as a throw-in player, and a guy that could replicate Gabe Vincent if they would have to trade him. Overall though, I think that's the primary impact of the aftermath of the San Antonio trade for De'Aaron Fox, and how the Lakers might be affected or benefit from that trade too. Primarily from the teams that weren't involved in it, apart from the Chicago Bulls, and they might feel pressure to trade their current remaining assets, their current veteran assets, to get worse for a better draft pick and getting more draft picks in return for them. But with that being said, what do you guys think? How do you feel about the De'Aaron Fox trade and how the Lakers might benefit from it? Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. But I think that'll pretty much do it for this one, and if you enjoyed the video, then I'll greatly appreciate it if you dropped a like, subscribe to the channel if you have not already, and hit that notification bell to never miss out when I upload a video. But as always, thank you for watching and have a great day.